Let's start and talk a little bit about operations and expressions we can use in Python. As before, we were doing some variables with values definitions there, such as a equals 42 and b equals to 42. Why not? Then, the same way we are defining variables, we can do something as defining expressions, such as a plus b, and we go there and print it out that result for us, and as simple as that, we have the result, right? A quick thing to notice here, since we are putting together a float and then an int, the final result is going to be a float y. This int right here is promoted to a float, so the final result here on our left, it's going to be a float as well. You don't need to use, if you're using interactive mode, of course, you don't need to define variables and do operations. You can just do expressions right away. So if you're running this on idle, for instance, you would have pretty much the same result. So there are some operations we should be aware of it, like let's try to do this in the right way, right? So let's declare our variables like x equals y, x equals 3 and y equals 2, and then we go there and do like z equals x divided by y, right? So, and then we do a print z. I know it's a little bit verbose, it's just for us to keep with the good habits, right? So when we do something like this, that's division, even though we are using both ints, we're going to have a float as a result. Some languages, if you're using int values, the final result is going to be an int as well. And in case of Python, if you want to use, and if you want to do integer division, which means we want to get rid of this float point number right here, you would do 2 slashes, like in this case, like 3 slash and number 2. And as we can see here, we got rid of the floating point that we had there. There are quite of other operations that we can have, being needless to say, if you do something like, well, let's use the print, so we can pretty much use this and print all our results after we type them down, right? So we can do subtraction, then we can do multiplication, like in this case, and let's multiply this by another value. Why not? We can do a division, as we already mentioned that. We can do even the power without specifying the power function, right? I mean, some programming languages you have to do power, and then you just do like power, and then the name of the power, right? Something like this. Python, you don't need to do necessarily this. If you do just like 2 to the power of 3, it's going to be 2 times 2. It's pretty much, we're going to have the same result that we had here, right? Then there is another operation, but I'll show this in a minute. So you see here in these cases, we have the subtraction, multiplication, and just to show that how the power is pretty much the same thing as you do this. Just as another example, if you do 2 to the power of 16, we would have something as this. Oops, sorry, that's just multiplication. Let's rerun this with the power, right? And we have 65,536. There is another operation we should be aware, is the modulo operator. For those not aware, the modulo operator basically gives you the reminder of the integer division that you have. So if you try to divide 3 by 2, what is the reminder, the integer reminder of this operation? Is 1, right? 3 fits one time, and 2, and there you go, we have 1 missing out there, right? You can also do some other operations with Boolean variables, but we're gonna talk about this in the next video. For now, Let's try to keep it up with just the normal like ints and even strings, right? Well, the same way we do as we show there, summation of numbers. You can try to do this with the string as well, which is pretty neat. So if we do something like, let's say x equals cake, and then I say that y equals moon, and let me add some more cells here so we don't run out of space, and let's just run this so we can keep the values, right? And then I say, well, you know, z, it's going to be pretty much y, and then we add a white space right here, and then we add the other variable as an x. I know I'm saying add, but when I'm talking about strings, try to understand that this add means concatenation, right? So if we do this and we printed out the value of z, what we're gonna have here, mooncake, right? So the first value is moon, as we had it here. The second value is a space, and then the third value is cake, as we can see it. Needless to say, I mean, if we have a variable like z and let's say now z is 42, and then let's say x, why not, x equals to, in fact, 42. And what happens if we try to combine those values, like an x plus z? If we try to overload this, we're going to have a type error. I know that you're going to say that, hey, Python is not typed, so what's happening? Well, that's the responsibility part that you have to be aware when you're doing Python. Even though we don't check for the types here when we're doing this operation, when it's running on the running time, it will verify, because you cannot add an int to a string. Either our string has to be converted to a number, or our number has to be converted into a string. This happens a lot, especially when you're trying to print something out from a file and you're concatenating all the information. Just a quick thing, we're going to see this later on, but let's say the file has something like Bob, and then you have the number like this. And if you read this, let's say this is a file, and if you read and try to print both of them, if you don't do a proper parsing, you're going to have an error, right? But we'll get that in the future. For now, what we do is, well, let's convert our number into a string so we can cast it out there as a string. And if we do like this, our number is going to be a string. And when we try to print it out this, let's do print it out W here. What is our result? 42, 42. Why? We converted our integer into a string, and then we concatenate both of those now strings into W. And if we print it out, we have 42 and 42, right? So that's all for our operations, and happy coding.